Welcome to Drink Beer, Think Beer. It's the podcast that gets to the bottom of every pint. I'm John Hall. Welcome to a new year and the first of our shows for 2021. And I'm excited that joining me today is Lisa and Brandon Boldt, like the lightning, the owners of Primitive Beer in Colorado. They gave me that line right before we started here. They bill themselves as Colorado's first exclusively spontaneous barrel-fermented beer blendery. And in the state that's claimed its fair share of firsts, I found that to be kind of a pretty big deal, especially after you've tasted their beer like I have. And you kind of wonder why we had to wait so long. So when they opened their doors in 2018, they made a splash on the local scene for their Méthode Traditionnelle ales, as well as the packaging. Maybe you've seen their beer in a box. But even their bottled offerings are starting to pop up around the country and would certainly be coveted at bottle shares if those were still a thing. And one thing to look out for is a collaboration they recently did with Beer Kulture. It's called Peach on a Beach. It's a blend of 2 and 3 year aged spontaneous beer matured on Colorado-grown Allstar peaches and Tahitian-grown vanilla beans, and then put into 2 freshly emptied Buffalo Trace Bourbon barrels. And here I am drinking an IPA like a sucker right now. So I want to get into all of that about what's going on with the brewery, as well as talking about cool ship season. But first, thanks to both of you for being here. And since we're a few days into the new year, I'm curious if there's any resolutions that you have for the brewery.
Thanks for having us. We're excited to launch our first 3-year blends. And we just hope that we can open our tap room at some point and really get people in the doors and talking about beer and learning about our process. But no concrete resolutions. I'm not really a resolution person.
Yeah, I think the benchmarks, the benchmarks for 2021 are hopefully pretty easy to attain compared to 2020. Definitely one of the fun things about having a brewery that is focused on this one single style of beer, particularly one that we hope improves with age, is the ability to blend older beer into the mix and to be able to release a 3-2-1 kind of eau de goose inspired blend has always been one of our goals since dreaming up the project. So for us, that's a big part of I think what 2021 is about. And actually, we've spent the last month putting a lot of what we hope to release in 2021 actually into the bottles and tasting them and making sure that they're on the right path.
I mean, Lisa, you mentioned opening up the tap room again, but I imagine that the type of brewery or business that you have where you're not necessarily turning and burning IPAs or trying to get new stouts out the door every couple of days to keep the lights on, there had to have been a little bit of a bonus into making, these spontaneous beers, but these, that are designed to age over time.
Yes.
to sort of help you get through, I can't even say the worst of it because like who the hell knows what's going to happen tomorrow, but
right.
And this is just a continuation, we're just,
we were in so many ways we were fortunate, but I'd say in terms of the beer, we didn't have fresh IPAs in tanks. We didn't have finished lagering, lagers that were ready to go. Everything that we make only gets, in theory, better with time. Yeah. And so there was no worry about when will this get out there, it was just like, okay, well, our beer will just sit a little longer. And so we focused during 2020, after the initial months of huge optimism, we focused on production and packaging and, exploring new fruits and a lot of bottling and boxing and just getting the best blends we could together without having to worry about getting them out the door quickly. And then pivoting to more of a packaged and to-go model as opposed to cask beer on tap like we had.
I don't know if we're allowed to say pivoting anymore in the new year.
Oh,
I think that's one of the things that we had to leave behind.
We're done with that, yeah.
But was that freeing in some ways of being able to do some of those experimentations or to, I don't know, have just a little bit more time to think about these beers that are so very much rooted in time?
I suppose so. Yeah. Yeah, we didn't have to rush anything, which was nice. What do you think, Brandon?
Yeah, I hate to take joy in anything that is 2020 related, or to kind of feel good about things in the midst of all the tragedy. But I will say, yeah, there was a lot of freedom in that way. Even though we were only open once a week on Saturdays previously, which is not a huge commitment, given that we are balancing that with other jobs. All of a sudden, removing the requirements of having an open tap room, and even some of the beer that goes towards what we would put on cask, there was a lot more time to actually commit to experiments and to learning and to additional processes that we wanted to play around with, certainly hoped to play around with and engage in, especially as we got towards those 3-year blends, and actually did have the opportunity to to go ahead and work with collaborations that we'd always wanted to put together. Beer Kulture, our friends Amalgam, soon Cellar West. I mean, yeah, I'd say there was a lot that, even from we brew seasonally. If all of a sudden everything started to shut down in March, the breweries that we produce our wort at for the coolship season, all of a sudden there was a lot more opportunity to use that equipment, produce more spontaneously inoculated wort on our own schedule. Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that the silver lining to this, the entire pandemic for us, is that because there is such a lag between our initial production and when we can release beers, that when we finally can have people back in our tap room, we should have a pretty interesting, mature, and diverse stock of beer to play around with.
That's so cool. Sorry, go ahead, Elisa.
Well, one more thing I was going to say, despite being open one day a week, we also, for 2020, we had 6 travel beer fests, 4 weddings, and like 3 or 4 local beer fests planned. That's the majority of weekends. That's the majority of weekends in the summer. And so that was all time that we would have not been working, not been blending, not been packaging. And though we got a little, stir crazy, it enabled us to really put some beer away. That amount of travel and money that would have gone toward that would have really hindered our production schedule.
For a new brewery, though, and for a brewery your size, a lot of the time those festivals, especially some of the local ones, those can be a boon, right? To introduce yourself to people for the first time, or to remind folks that you're around if they've forgotten. I mean, in a crowded state like Colorado, I don't mean that in a bad way, but
totally.
in a crowded state like Colorado, it's really difficult to keep track. Like
but we can do
John
it
Shikes, like I don't know how he does it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like guy. That's but missing some of those things, is that a ground game that you're going to have to
we'll get the word out this year, and we'll have the beer to support it. Honestly, like we wouldn't have had nearly this much beer in the pipeline, so we'll get the word out later,
I think we've also tried to find other ways, because that's a huge point. Even if direct to consumer sales has kept us afloat during a lot of this pandemic, the only reason there were people in other states that even were interested in taking the chance and having us ship some of our beer to them was perhaps some of the beer fests that we'd attended on the East Coast, some of the invitationals that we went to that all of a sudden maybe gave us a little more street credit, or a little bit more of the opportunity to get onto people's radar. So I think during this time, Lisa's done a really great job of sending care packages to some of her friends in the industry, and trying to send love and goodwill out to people in different ways, despite not being able to do it in person. I think even her kind of methodology towards packaging and the way that beers are delivered to people, I think there's something extremely personal about it. She writes handwritten notes, and she puts a lot of thought into it on that side, which I hope translates to the thought that we actually put into the beer within the package as well.
Let's talk about packaging, because your beer popped up on my radar maybe about a year and a half ago when we were doing Steal This Beer, the other podcast. And I want to say that it was Evan Watson of Plan B brought one of your boxed beers. And in addition to really enjoying the hell out of it, we were also sort of taken by the packaging, which is something that I had not seen, for quite some time. There's a brewery out in Sacramento called Rubicon, which was trying to do beer in a box 15 years ago, maybe. And I hadn't really seen it since then. And I know that's just one of your many packaging offerings that are out there these days, but talk to me like why that makes sense for the beers that you're making. And I guess for those who haven't seen this yet, if you can sort of, how do you describe it to first timers, I guess?
Sure. So it's a 1.5 liter bag with a little faucet in a box that has a little cardboard circle you can punch out, and then you pull the faucet through, and then you take the little safety off, and then you can pour beer out of the bag. So it's just like a Boda box, a black box, whatever those other brands are, Franzia, the classic.
Yeah.
A lot smaller. But it's beer.
There are some games in my career that
I had some good times with those. I describe it to customers that are wary about it. I say it's beer on tap in your fridge, but it's not carbonated. So you can sample, you won't, basically it won't go bad. You're not letting any light in. There's no oxygen getting in. It's in its own sort of environment. But the beer is a wild beer, so it changes and evolves through time. And you can sample it with an ounce here, a full glass there, however you like to taste it. I mean, you can also take the bag out, slap it, and drink it straight to your face, which has also been fun at Beer Fest for us.
Yeah.
But
that's not something that you would have been able to do in 2020.
No, absolutely not.
Slap the bag, pass it around.
Yeah. And some people put their mouth on it, which I don't condone. So
there's always one kid in like high school that did that with the water fountain and ruined it for everybody else. Yeah. We all
no longer.
Yeah, and we hope that kid is doing well nowadays. But
he's a super spreader.
If that is definitely the case.
He is most certainly a super spreader. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But what's the shelf life on that? Like once you break that seal?
So we say drink it within 2 years. Never lasts anybody that long. For fruited offerings, I say drink it within 2 months. Unfruited, take your time. But we have beers from our first couple releases kind of in our little bag-and-box library, and they taste different, but they taste really good. They're evolving and changing, and they haven't spoiled. So, it's all about how you want it to taste. If you like how it tastes now, drink it now. If you want to see how it changes, you can wait on it.
Well, what are the evolutions that you've seen in taste and aroma?
Yeah.
Is there like one beer that you could pick that you could sort of like walk through on that?
I would say there's kind of the same similar maturation profile of a lot of these beers as I would expect from as I would expect in the bottle as well. If a lot of our early culture flavors, when they're really young, before Brettanomyces starts to take hold and transform those beers, there's more Saccharomyces forward flavors. There are more almost rustic Saison-y qualities more than what I would attribute to, full-fledged lambic-like qualities. So some of the beers that go in the bag that are slightly on the younger side, maybe closer to the 8 to 12 month mark as opposed to the 16 to 18 month mark, they showcase a little more of those younger qualities, a little more of that Saccharomyces forward, farmhousiness. As they stay in the bag, I think they do start to continue to convert. They become a little more a little more Brett forward. Some of those precursor products are hydrolyzed and kind of no longer as evident. I'd say the acidity stays relatively consistent, and it doesn't attenuate too much more. There's only one or two vintages that we've put into bag that we've seen kind of puff, continue fermentation a little bit, never to the point of explosion, which is great.
Yeah, no, that's important.
But, you know, yeah,
because then you're just going to get wet cardboard and everybody's going to think it's all oxidized. So
yeah.
But isn't explosive packaging all the rage now? I mean,
would
that put us
stop. There's
again
with
dangerous territory.
With pivot. All right, we're leaving that all on the side of the 450 North Highway. You know, it's exploding packages and everything else. Yeah.
That's past us problems.
We are not past those problems. They're just going to get worse.
I'd say the maturity goes more from fruitiness to funkiness. Ironically, if it's a fruity bagged beer, it probably goes from fruitiness to funkiness, both ways. All right, I'm going to go with that. Final answer, lock it in.
As you bring us back to 2004, look at this. We're just time traveling now at this point.
It feels good.
I'm curious though as to, so now you're headed into year 3, and so you have some of those early versions of the beer in a box, and you're starting to see firsthand how they've changed because you have the benefit of having them in your home library. As you taste some of those older ones that are being opened for the first time, are you starting to think about how you want your recipes to evolve so that they can continue to mature that way? Like now that you have a chance to taste older beer that's been preserved in this, yeah.
Without a doubt. And I think those little tweaks and those little, within the scope of Méthode Traditionnelle, there actually is quite a bit of room. I mean, micro adjustments have a major influence over long amounts of time. And as we've tasted our stock at the 1-year mark, the 18-month mark, the 2-year, et cetera, whether packaged or not, that has definitely stimulated a lot of micro adjustments and change. In any given brew year, we do try and have a little bit of diversity in terms of the wort that we're producing, have some on the more bitter side, and hopefully mitigate kind of acid development and expect that to really mature most gracefully, and then have some that we expect to use at the 1 or 2 year mark, maybe a little more lactic developed. I don't want to say quicker turnaround at that point, but intentionally for use as younger stock. So there are absolutely constant changes going on, even to really esoteric parts of process, like the turbid mash procedure, and figuring out, do we really want our protein rest at 126 Fahrenheit, or do we want to bump that up to 128? There are, and for how long before we start lautering? We are absolutely thinking about what those adjustments influence as those beers develop, and what it means in terms of having a functional blend.
There's like 10 veins of conversation that you've just opened up, and I'm trying to figure out which one to.
That's how he talks.
This could be a long podcast. We've got nowhere to go.
I know, but I have to upload at midnight Eastern. So
okay.
There is a timeline. That
sounds like a you problem.
Yeah. It is. It's the story of my life. Is just that's going to be the title of my autobiography. It's going to be, it's a me problem. Yeah. Over and over and over again. But I'm when you first started thinking about this brewery, there's all these conversations that I have with folks who go pro, where they say, oh, I was a home brewer, or, I was working at another brewery and I decided that I wanted to sort of do my own thing. Where was the idea for Primitive born from? For you
both of those things. We were home brewers. We were beer industry people, and we traveled a lot. We liked going to Belgium. We liked exploring the lambic culture, and we wanted, I'm sure it's a story that many people tell, we wanted a place that was all our own, where we could make all the decisions and, brew whatever we wanted. But all we wanted to do is lambic, because it's all we want to drink. And so we just did a deep dive. We really hadn't done too many test batches. We did a few at the brewery we used to work at, and they did not turn out. So we learned a lot of lessons. And it was really just, if we're going to do this one thing, let's only do this one thing. Let's get as good at it as we can be. We won't be distracted by any other beer styles. I mean, that's what our other jobs are for, brewing things that actually make money for other people. And we'll just get so into this that it's, our whole life, which it in a lot of ways it became.
But I've heard other folks say similar things, where, okay, we want to do the beers that we want to make. And then they start making seltzer smoothies where they start making, West Coast IPAs or whatever in there. You're both still on the path.
Yeah.
The intended path.
Yeah. We're, we met in grad school for geology. So we definitely geek out on the academic side and never had any intentions of making money in life. That was
even in geology. You have to.
I was going to say, that's.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We weren't going into petroleum with the fields that we were studying. We were, destined to either be professors or, environmentalists, that type of thing. So, switching over to beer and finding a niche or finding something to, pursue from a, mostly academic, slightly artistic viewpoint, I think it just made sense to us, or continues to make sense to us. I think for me, there's also something really fulfilling about, hopefully we're adding something to the collective beer scene. I think there are so many great brewers making, passionately making those smoothie seltzers and those West Coast IPAs and the beers that actually pay the bills. I hope, that we can showcase some other styles that deserve, deserve their own little pursuit of passion and happiness, and that it's possible, even if stupid, even if it's an endless toil.
I understand the point that you guys are making, and I know you're joking about it a little bit, but a lot of people don't get into brewing or journalism for that matter, to make a ton of money. Like, you want to eke out a nice living and do right by your family and that kind of thing. It's not, being, wealthy, the richest of avarice, that kind of thing. But I'm curious as to 2018, as I start to think about it more and more, was kind of a fun year in brewing, and the overall industry was trying to still figure itself out. And there's the onslaught of the competition and et cetera, et cetera. But you could be a niche brewery in 2018 where, we're just going to be known for this, we're just going to make lagers. We're just going to make Rausch beers. We're just going to make whatever. Could you do that if you opened today, do you think?
Yeah, just 3 years depending on the style. Yeah, you wouldn't necessarily be the only one, which we were never trying to be. But yeah, I think you have to find the niche that you're passionate about. Like, we have a friend opening a Czech lager specific place. That's very niche, and that's opening 2021. So it's possible, you have to be ambitious and you have to work hard. But yeah, I think there's still room for us being specialized.
I think a lot of the room for being specialized also lies in educational opportunities. There are still so many people out there that don't drink beer, and so many people who do drink beer that don't necessarily know what they're drinking, know what they like, or know what they want to drink next. I think being able to, have the opportunity to educate and promote different styles and help people find the other things that they love that they had no idea that they loved. There's still, maybe we're overly optimistic and know nothing about business, but I think there's still a lot of people out there that can be, there's more than enough pie for all of us. I think, especially in our perfect world, 20 more, empty spawn blenderies open up around the Colorado, like the Front Range area, and we can get a brew house and we can supply people with inoculated wort, much like it worked in Belgium, and cafe culture can exist. And we by no means, we don't feel ownership of the concept that we fostered, and we certainly like to share anything that we know, packaging or otherwise, techniques that have worked, because I think we're at heart, we're beer drinkers before beer producers, and the more good beer that's out there that we can trade for or swap for, or find ways to enjoy, even better.
I probably get an email a month asking me, like, tell me more about I'm a brewer, tell me more about bag-in-box. Like, I'm so excited about it. I want to do it. Does it work for you? What do you do? Why do you do it? And I answer all of them. I'm psyched. I want more people to do it. And then I selfishly get to drink more bag-in-box beer as well. And their customers are excited about bag-in-box. They find us, we find their customers. It's all, it's mutually beneficial to everyone. So I'm excited about it.
Can that work for most styles, do you think, or does it really sort of hit
flat? Oh, I thought you meant for bag-in-box.
Yeah, no, I do. Yeah.
Oh, it works best for still beer, because then you don't have to worry about carbonation.
Yeah.
Ode Beersel in Belgium, who was one of our initial inspirations for bag-in-box beer, they've developed essentially like a Kevlar bag that can hold, I think, up to 3 psi. Was it, Brandon? 3?
Jesus. Yeah. Gert is really
that's
really
actually yeah.
So we want that too. That would be really cool. But in the meantime, I did give some advice to a brewery that wanted to do cask beer in a bag. They wanted it to be lightly carved, and so we were basically saying, maybe size up the bag to give you room for that, the gas. And I think it worked for them. People were talking about it working. So there's, you have to be willing to experiment and fail, but I think you could probably get pretty creative and do a lot of styles. And I would love to see more, which we're working on, more beer wine hybrids in bag-in-box, because those are delicious still. They don't need to be carbonated necessarily.
I'd love to see when Denver lost Liberati in the early part of 2020, and that was a big loss for the wine beers that were the Onio beers, right? It's a huge loss. Yeah,
and that was a niche that it was super upsetting to lose, because it had the opportunity of bringing in again a whole nother group of drinkers, wine drinkers, who are now interested in beer. And on the other way, we love wine, so getting beer drinkers more interested about the other components of fermentation as well. I mean, that was a huge educational opportunity, and they were making just really good beer.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, and things that just, as you started to peel back the layers, it was just a lot of fun to explore. I'm curious. So you're in Longmont, Colorado, and your brewery's open. You were saying like 1 day a week. People coming in, they're drinking cask ale, they're getting beer to go. I mean, Longmont has no shortage of fun breweries. Left Hand kind of comes to mind, and I know Ryan Wibby's doing his thing there, and there's a few other breweries in the general area. Bootstrap,
Oscar Blues, Bootstrap. Yeah,
sure. Oh yeah, absolutely. Oscar Blues. Yeah, we've heard of them.
The little guys.
Yeah, but where did you all in normal times fit into a beer drinker's day?
Well, I think we were the exploratory place, the place where you go, or maybe one person in your group has read about us, has heard of us, has had a lambic before, and they drag their friends over. And if their friends like sour beer, we're okay. Or our wine drinkers. We appeal a lot to wine drinkers sometimes.
Whoop, you there?
Yep, I lost her.
Okay.
Lisa? I can go downstairs and check.
I know you just have to go. Yeah. I should point out that you guys are in the same house, but in different rooms.
Oh, sorry.
Lisa?
Did you lose me?
Yeah.
Yep. I kept talking the whole time.
Yeah, we were talking about how we're very estranged as a couple. And
yes.
through the pandemic, we just don't even stay in the same room anymore.
Separate floors.
Social distancing in your own home.
Yeah. I don't want to get what he has.
How 2021 of you. Yeah.
Thank you.
But so you the last thing I heard is if people are into sour beers, then they're going to enjoy sour beers.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sour beers, wine drinkers. We appeal to wine drinkers sometimes. And it's sort of the place to go where, we had guest beers, but for what we brew, we didn't have the something for everyone kind of method. We had this strange style that we wanted to tell you about and explain to you and give you the history of, and hope that you like it. It's not aggressively acidic. It's not so oaky your mouth dries out. It's refreshing in multiple ways, but hopefully, through the flavors, of course, but also through the history and the story, you find a new beer that you really like.
When it would come to on a Saturday note, what I was trying to kind of figure out was people who are brewery hopping. They're visiting Colorado, or they're just, hey, we're going to spend the day kind of bouncing around. Was there like a place in the day that you would see beer travelers come, like, okay, we've hit the lager place to start off, we've gone to the IPA place, we're going here, but now we're going there. Could you sort of figure out like where in the day you were for various drinkers? First stop, last stop, somewhere in the middle?
We were either like destination one because they'd read about us and they had to come to us, or they did like the wild beer tour of like Black Project, us, Purpose in Fort Collins, sort of this swoop across the Front Range, which I thought was pretty cool.
KC the day before or KC the day after. Like, yeah, there were definitely, and we were often sometimes on a trajectory with like Weldworks and Wiley route. If they were coming from Denver, we might be an excuse on their, to stop on the way up to Greeley, and then Fort Collins. Okay. Yeah, Longmont's kind of just oddly, it's Front Range, but it's between, a couple to a few major cities.
Yeah.
And then we'd also, it's hard to, when we're open, unless we recognize the person, I think there was a lot of fun in trying to remove our implicit bias, because you could not judge when someone came in based off the way, they were dressed or they looked or anything else, whether they were going to love our beer or whether they had any idea of what lambic was. I mean, sometimes someone would come in and I think Lisa and I would look at each other and be like, all right, this is going to be, get ready to be rejected, get ready to be shot down. We know this person is going to absolutely hate what we're giving them. There's not going to be anything for them, but, we're prepared to give you a 10-minute spiel and a tour and, get excited with you and still, be okay with you saying, nah, not for me. And all of a sudden they'd be like, oh yeah, I was in Cantillon a month ago. I know exactly what you guys are doing. And then just being like, oh, fuck yeah, this is easy. This is great. I love this.
You said it, I think, twice. I was waiting for the third time so I could do the full Beetlejuice, but Méthode Traditionnelle. And then you started saying lambic on me. So I don't really quite know. I can say lambic
when it's I can say lambic if it's about other people, specifically like the Belgians who are producing it. I can't say lambic about ourselves.
We're allowed to use the word lambic. We just can't talk about our own beer that way.
It's in the lexicon.
Yeah. So you do use MT. You use Méthode Traditionnelle to describe the beers that you're making. And I feel like for the better part of the last 7-8 years, this has been coming up in various conversations, and brewers have been trying to get it kickstarted. And then there's a rise to it and then a fall. And, you start to talk to some brewers who were early adopters of it, and they just kind of shrug it off now. You're still a relatively new brewery. You're using that term. Why is that important to you? And why should it be important to us, the drinkers?
I think it showcases a level of commitment to process that sort of lets you know the, not quality, but like care that went into the beer. it's hard as a brewery that follows all these rules to not have a shorter, more simple, more worldwide accepted term like lambic, because that word means something. And Méthode Traditionnelle is still, I think, it's a young term, and it also is the same term for certain wines and cheeses and things made in other sort of departments. But to us, it's something that we're willing to work on more and fight for, because it does highlight everything that goes into the beer, process-wise.
Yeah, and I should say, I think I know we've got a lot of friends in the spontaneous community who even posted, about why when years ago when this was kind of at the forefront of beer news and that type of thing, posted why they thought empty was a mistake, was stupid, was a kind of a limitation on creativity. And I can understand and appreciate and respect all of those brewers and their honestly their reasons for thinking that. For us, being technique driven, something that we care more about is following that process rather than tasting like lambic. For example, there are other amazing breweries. Beechwood Blendery comes to mind, where their goal is to produce something that tastes like lambic, whether or not it's following any set of rules. The ends justify the means, kind of in that way. For us, we are technique driven, not flavor driven. We want to go through the rituals, practice this process that has occurred for at least the last 100 years, arguably, few hundred years, and showcase whatever flavors emerge, blending and adjusting parameters to our liking, but not necessarily ever aiming to taste exactly like anyone else's lambic or tasting like any other product, making our own, showcasing our own terroir through that process. So for us, it's not that the beer is going to be any higher quality or any better than a spontaneous beer, or even mixed culture beer that is not produced using Méthode Traditionnelle, but it means something to us, and it celebrates a part of history that we get excited about. I think as atheist Jews, there is something exciting about celebrating culture.
Well, what's interesting to me, though, is as you were saying that, and Lisa, as you were talking about following rules, when I think back to the late 1990s and the brewers that were making a splash at the time, and the Greg Cook or the Sam Calagione, or the other folks who were railing against the Reinheitsgebot, sort of calling it a purity law, saying we're not going to do that, and, we're the anti-right. There was this counterculture that was built by those second generation brewers here in the US of let's buck tradition. And then of course, you saw people making goose and lambic, and they're throwing, kiwis into it, or lactose, or God knows what, and sort of saying, like, fuck the Belgians, like we're gonna we're gonna take their chocolate and throw it into a good, like that kind of thing. And like it I like the fact that to hear you sort of talk about rules and to talk about disciplines, because as much as styles don't exist anymore, I almost wish that they did a little bit, just so that there were guidelines for folks to follow, and guidelines for folks to understand beer. I had Kim Sturdivant on the show last year, and he's credited with creating the Brewed IPA, and those who listened in might remember we were talking about how that style never had a chance to really take off, because as soon as he put it out there into the world, people started fucking around with it, and everybody fucked around with it in their own way, and nobody could, it was like putting Jello to the wall. You couldn't, nothing stuck. So I love that approach of following the rules. And I guess the natural follow-up question is, should more people be doing this?
I wouldn't say that more people necessarily. I don't know. I think we really like it. Brandon has described it before on a tour, and I always really like the analogy of people ask us, is it limiting to brew essentially one style of beer? And he always says, no, it's basically we're following the recipe to make the paint in this really, specific method. And then what we do with the paint, the blending, the fruiting, that's the painting, that's the canvas. So it's not limiting. It's I don't know, it opens up different options for us. As far as other people doing it, I mean, I'd be excited about it, but I'm not going to make anyone follow sets of rules. That's for them to decide.
I don't know. I feel like you guys could get badges made with MT on it and some sort of cool font and just start kicking down cold box doors and being,
So
What's in that keg?
Yeah, it's some sort of Interpol that you guys have created.
I love it.
And, yeah.
Yeah. Lisa, is this the place to expose ourselves on the Lambic police?
Oh, go for it.
Special
It's not
victim
active
unit.
enough to be a big reveal.
Yeah, we have an Instagram account that's probably only got about 30 followers and only 4
It's
posts. That is the Lambic police. And anytime
No shit,
someone,
really?
Yeah.
Oh, I was just trying to make a joke. You guys are now scrambling to try to make this a reality. This is you trying to
No,
make
we
things
did this
happen.
2 years ago. Yeah. So we were going on.
Joke. Yeah.
Yeah, we'd go on people's accounts who brewed quote unquote lambics here in the U.S. and they're pitch culture or they were not in any way lambics, and we would
Kettle
call them
sour
out.
with fruit. Yeah, and it's lambic.
But we would call them out in a funny way, I think. Maybe
All
not.
right. So if this is you guys, it's 6 posts and 81 followers.
Oh, okay, we're doing all
At
right.
this
Damn.
point. I'm sorry, 82
undersell,
followers because I
over-deliver.
just joined it. And I'm gonna demand that you guys start updating this as well. And you look, you
Yeah.
have a little badge of somebody holding a foamy mug of lager, which
Yeah, well,
makes
you know.
zero sense.
We're not consistent, I'll tell you that much. And we are, yeah. I mean, I guess
The Lambic
for us,
police on
that's a-
Instagram, and their profile says pulling you over for a Lambic violation.
Yeah.
Yep.
If there's one thing we want to do, it's make an ironically esoteric, really rigid style of beer, but not be pretentious as we do it. I think it's a hard and fun line to. We love when people make beer and follow their passion. It doesn't have to be our passion. They can do it in different ways. We're not going to try and we would never be the ones to say, this is the right way to make beer. This is the wrong way to make beer. But we know, and you're a wordsmith, words mean something. And I think, while you don't need to brew to style, there is an importance to having definitions, even if that is so you can define why your beer is not within style, why you're working. I think the style space is a very much like an XYZ, cross section where you can, if you adjust the color or the gravity or the yeast strain or any one of these other things, there are very well, quantifiable regions of that space that fit historic styles. And it doesn't mean you need to fit within those regions, but at least it helps you to figure out potentially what your inspiration is or why you're trying to move from one style space to another, or inspiration of one area to another, or how to hybridize styles, I guess. And if your mind doesn't work that way, that's cool too. I mean, that's why I believe styles are of importance.
I love hearing that. I have the SVU theme playing in the back of my head right now, so that's why I was
Nice.
chuckling. It's in a lambic world, there's 2 types of people. Let's talk about fruit for a minute. And I'm mindful of your time, but
Don't be.
well,
Again, it's.
I know.
you're the one who took the time.
This is a me problem at this point. But I'm curious as to where you're trying to, or where you draw inspiration from fruits, because I read a piece that was written about you shortly after you opened, where you were almost talking about the brewery as a CSA and getting fresh produce coming in, seasonal produce. working with farms, working with the seasons. I guess on your side, in your size, that can be difficult, but also sort of fun as well, because you don't need a ton, to make the beers that you want to make. But where do you start when you start thinking about fruits, and when you start thinking about adding outside ingredients? You've made the paint. Now you want to, start adding some color. Where do you start?
I think there's probably two answers to that question. And Lisa, please let me know if you think there's anything additional that I'm missing. One is really what's available. There are, we are committed to supporting our local farmers, supporting only Colorado growers. Right now, it's an arbitrary boundary, a big square of a state that we've selected to support. And if we ever open up something in another state, we want to support the growers and farmers from that state. But we are very much sharing in the uncertainty of that kind of agricultural mindset. So, for example, this year had an extremely late frost, and we wound up not getting any stone fruit as a result. The past 3 years that we've been adding fruit to beer, and you can now do the math on that, knowing that we quote unquote opened in 2018.
I'm not the feds, man. I'm not here to narc on you.
You're not the landing police.
I'm glad this is or the other police. Yeah.
The real police.
Or like the real police. Yeah.
Alcohol police.
Yeah. Well, whose jurisdiction is it? The Lambic police or the real police?
Yeah,
I think it's we're going to have to figure that out one later.
When the TTB kicks down your door and the federal agents show up, I don't recognize your authority. Your badge doesn't have a guy holding a foamy mug of lager on it, so you can't be real. Yeah.
Yeah. Which, as we all know, is the traditional sign of the Belgian embassy. So, but
just start screaming sanctuary, and I think you're covered. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's how and I plead the fifth. I've learned that one.
Sure. I think that works as well. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. But this past season, no cherries, plums, apricots, peaches, any of the fruits that we'd really grown accustomed to, pun kind of intended there.
Yeah.
So it was 2020, so I can say pivot again. We can't pivot in 2021, but in 2020, we wound up then going super heavily into wine grapes and apples. And, while we still have a number of different stone fruit beers from last year that were just packaged and will be available soon, it'll be another year or so before people realize, oh wait, where'd all the stone fruit beers go? Now we had to learn and adapt and get a new set of skills. So one answer to that question is very much what is available, and sharing in the victories and the losses that our farmers feel, and making sure that we are still there to support them through thick and thin. The other side, I think, of the question you were asking is more related to, and correct me if I'm wrong, more related to the beer and how do you know what fruit to add to what beer.
Yeah.
And as maybe cliche as this sounds, we try and let the beer speak to us. There are some beers that are just unbelievably beautiful and characteristic as a single barrel, and we don't even want to blend them. That's more rare. There are other beers that blend together and we say this has, the right amount of acidity and funk and balance. It would be a real shame to re-ferment fruit on this and lose some of this balance. Typically, when we are looking at beer for fruit re-fermentation, it is definitely some of our lower acid stock that is exciting on its own, but not necessarily doesn't speak for itself. Something that we think can actually be a canvas to hold fruit and not feel like we are eclipsing its natural character, or vice versa, potentially not doing justice to showcase the fruits that we are looking to re-ferment. And our methods of re-fermentation, and whether we're doing that in stainless or oak, et cetera, a lot of that has to do with a lot of it is desired acid level, and making sure that we're not allowing that to creep up and not allowing that to get to a point where we don't find it enjoyable, which is we like things with restraint. So that's a long-winded answer. Lisa, do you think how do you feel about fruit?
Yeah, well, it's really cool to be able to support Colorado agriculture. We get our malt from Eastern Colorado. It's malted in Fort Collins. All our fruit and hops come from the Roaring Fork Valley in the mountains up west of us, like 4 hours away. So we keep, that's where the CSA idea came from. Like, people buy our beer, they support us, but we support farmers. So we're keeping the money within Colorado, within the agriculture community, and they can count on us to buy grain every year and fruit every year and hops every year. So in that way, it is a CSA. It's you're buying beer, but you're directly supporting agriculture.
Yeah. I think it's also important to say that we love and respect and need the farmers around us, because with the exception of Lisa, who has a green thumb, there's no chance that we could be growing really any of the things appropriately to brew ourselves. We're excited to learn and deep dive the process of taking these ingredients and also working with our farmers and maltsters to gather what we need. But I don't think either of us I think we'd love to live on a farm and have a farm brewery, but we would still rely on the expertise and the friendship of those around us.
Yeah. Yep.
When it comes to bottle conditioning, secondary fermentation, you're using honey as well.
Yes.
I've seen a few breweries do this, and it seems to sort of be growing in popularity these days. What's the appeal for doing that? What does that add to the beer?
Yeah, so it's another Colorado product that's in Berthoud, which is just north of us, 20 miles north or so. So another agriculture supporter. We found that in our beer, we use it in our 2-year blends and a lot of our fruited beers, even our fruited 3-year. It adds, so one of the things we do is we don't, boil it or anything. We don't get it above a temperature where it kills off the natural microbes in there. So it adds more things that can ferment more, there's more life, more activity. Plus we use this alfalfa honey, that wildflower honey, that is delicious on its own. And so it adds like a really subtle layer of flavor, a flavor that we've also found just in our beer on its own. There's this honey character to a lot of our blends that we're really excited about. So sort of amplifying that a little with a local ingredient.
Yeah, we would certainly consider other sources of sugar beyond honey, but in Colorado, there used to be sugar beets that may have been turned into, granulated sugar, that kind of thing, but that industry no longer exists. We have now, for the 3-year unfruited blends, moved on to using, for the most part, young spontaneous beer, because that was always A, really traditional, and B, for whatever reason, to my knowledge, there haven't been any, or at the very least, many American producers who have gotten that process to work adequately. So ever the people who want to, eventually fail, we figured, let's put all of our eggs in one basket and start playing around with young spawn. So, I think when at this point, and ironically now, people like Dre Fontainen and a bunch of contemporary lambic blenders and goose blenders are using their local honey as a priming sugar. So that's really cool to now see. That was something that we were doing, and we'll continue to do for some of our blends. It's now a lot of fun to actually get to try the Dre Fontaine and Honeg versus their just eau de goose, and see what honey actually contributes to a pretty well understood terroir for goose, and understand if that's something that we want to continue doing for ourselves or experiment in different ways. But yeah, I think anything that is fruited, we will probably continue to use the honey, because that still allows that fruit to take the center stage. There's less dilution by additional unfruited beer in that way. Whereas a lot of our unfruited blends, especially at that 3-year mark, having those microbes take the center stage, having just the terroir of the beer and the raw wheat and the malted barley, having more of that young stock, which shapes and evolves that beer, definitely is something that we're interested in.
can you tell me about this collaboration you did with Beer Kulture?
Yeah. So for those of you, I'm talking now to the audience, I guess.
Oh, sure.
Not,
yeah. Look at you breaking down the walls of, yeah.
I'm trying, I'm just trying to learn from the best here. For those not familiar with Beer Kulture,
do like a Zach
amazing
Mars thing and just time out. Yeah. And just turn to the camera.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's very topical with the new Saved by the Bell reboot. So we'll do the timeout.
2021's weird, man.
In.
Yeah.
Dude, everything is going full circle.
I'm waiting for the Small Wonder reboot, but yeah, I don't think it's going to happen.
Ooh.
Like AI is like a real thing now, and I feel like Vicky would just murder the family or something. Anyway,
have you thought about putting the screenplay out there? Just
open up on a McMansion in suburban Connecticut. Yeah.
You could write a book and a screenplay at the same time, right?
Sure. Yeah. It's and do a podcast and like 5 other podcasts and some other stuff as well.
Yeah, you're not.
No, but let's talk. No, seriously, the very important Beer Kulture collaboration that you guys did.
Yes.
Yeah. So Beer Kulture is this incredible organization that really strives to increase diversity, equity, and inclusion in our industry. There's been a lot of talk for a long time about how inclusive our industry is, but unfortunately, that's a lot of talk. And as we come to, as many people have known for centuries, but as many of us privileged people come to learn about the systems of oppression and structural racism, et cetera, there's a lot that we have to be doing constantly that we've just been failing at. Anyway, the whole idea of Beer Kulture is, as a 501c3, is to form collaborations and raise awareness about this, about a lot of these issues and how we can improve this industry. So we specifically have a theoretically infinite series of collaborations with them, but have 2 beers in the pipeline, one that we just released, and all of the proceeds from those beers goes towards scholarships that help Black, Indigenous people of color access to our industry in ways that unfortunately have been prevented in the past.
Love it. I'm looking forward to trying it. And as small as you are and with the limited hours, you're actually shipping beer. And Lisa, I know this is something you know a little bit.
Yes.
Something about.
Yes. Yeah. So in addition to working with.
Oh man, just when you were about to look at that. Just when you were about to plug the day job, just when you were about to tell people where they could get their beer, your internet crapped out on you.
Yeah.
Are you back?
Hi.
I don't hear.
Okay, at least
hello. Can you hear me? Yeah, I could tell that your little lights were going on and off, and I was still talking. So the internet's been tricky for me down here. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay.
By the way, I think it's pretty rude that Brandon had you go down into the basement with the poor Wi-Fi connection.
Sounds like.
Well, it's really cozy down here, so I chose it. But if I'd known about the Wi-Fi, I would have chosen upstairs.
All right. So, but people can get your beer.
I like the narrative better this way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like it when you're like, go to the basement.
Yeah. If only people knew.
This is going to be a new podcast that I launch where it's just a brewery marriage counseling. And
I love it.
Yeah.
Help us.
Some pun on couples therapy. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm not at all qualified, which makes the show a lot of fun to listen to.
I want like a really punny name about like pints.
I do too. I also want there to be a lot of drama.
Yes.
John Tess and Brian Yeager, if either of you are listening, this is now your new challenge. Who can come up with the funniest name first?
I want this.
All right,
yeah.
But let's talk about how people can get your beer these days, and why people can get your beer these days.
Yes. So locally, we use Culture Bev. They're a boutique distributor here in Colorado, and they take anywhere from 5 to 25 of cases, whatever we have available for them, and give them to accounts around the state, which is really cool. It's really awesome that people can get our beer around and they don't have to come to our tap room. We also do Saturdays to go in our tap room currently. Hopefully that will change into more days, but that's where we're at right now. And then I have an online store on our website through Bev, which is my day job. And I send out packages on Mondays. If anyone orders throughout the week, I just put together orders in my free time, and then I ship out orders on Mondays. You can get any of our bottles, any of our bag-in-box, and a little bit of merch as well.
Cool. The nature of shipping beer was one of those things that has really sort of taken off during the pandemic. Mm-hmm. It was available beforehand. It's making the beer world a little bit smaller and making some of the, the underground finds. Are they having to travel for beer or getting mules or grandma online or whatever? Not as necessary. I mean, it still is for certain releases and everything, but for a brewery like you guys, and are there downsides, or is it all just upswing?
For us, it's all positives. It's people don't realize that alcohol laws are state by state, which makes interstate shipping really difficult. Interstate, really difficult because certain states allow reciprocity and some don't. But the states that do allow it, and some that have relaxed during COVID, so to allow a little more, just, the economy to flourish. For us, it's been all positives. If we get an article written about, this new thing we're doing, or people are like, oh, what is bag-in-box? They can buy it and I can ship it to their house in many states. So it's been all positives for us. There hasn't really been a downside.
I think it's important to say that from the get-go, we're going to try our best not to lean into hype and try not to go with a business model that is about, purposefully limiting supply so that the demand goes up and all of that, and, generate lines and that kind of thing. I mean, don't get me wrong, it would have really stoked our ego if that was the case. But I think for us, this was not a hard decision whatsoever to be like, oh yeah, I mean, if this is an easy way to get our beer to other places where people actually enjoy what we're making, that's a no-brainer. So I think we actually leaned in. Lisa, yeah.
Oh yeah. So it's just saying we can't rely on just our backyard to buy enough spontaneous beer to keep us afloat. We're doing a super niche thing. But if there's people out there that read about us and they're excited and they want to buy our beer, I want to get it to them. I want them to have a good experience. So that's been really, really great for us.
Love it. Well, Sergeant Lisa Boldt and Lieutenant Brandon Boldt of the Lambic Police, and also of Primitive Beer in Longmont, Colorado. Thanks for being here. This was a lot of fun having you on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, this was great.
Thanks for this therapy.
So we had nothing
session.
else to. Yeah, we needed this. We've been home alone together for way too long, so to have a third involved. Yeah.
Very helpful. Mediator.
Well, all right. Before we go, I just want to remind everybody to make sure to head over to Facebook to join the This Week in Rausch Beer group, because there's always something smoky going on. And if beer audio is your thing, make sure you listen to the Beer Edge podcast with Andy Crouch for deep dive conversations with interesting brewery owners and more. And also head over to beeredge.com for articles and to sign up for the newsletter. Every Monday, look for new episodes of Steal This Beer, and once a month, download the BYO Nano podcast. And please don't forget to subscribe to this show and to leave a review. And you can always reach me on email at johnholl, it's JOHNHOLL at beeredge.com, or on Twitter at John_Hall. You know the deal. Nate Schweber does the music. Jeff Quinn designed our logo. And I'm John Hall. New episodes of this show release every Wednesday. And that's when I'll be back again to drink beer and to think beer.